Hi guys, so welcome to this third battle report. This was a 2,400 point game with ETC rules against my friend Jiashu here in Beijing. So a quick look at the army list for you. Take the opportunity to pause if you want to study it closer. So here's the deployment phase. Starting on my side, Beast of Nurgle on the left. Then a unit of Plague Bearers, unit of Furies, second unit of Plague Bearers in the centre with the BSB, unit of Furies next to them, and behind them the Blight Kings. Next to those are the Plague Drones, then the Herald of Tzeentch on a disc deliberately behind a wall, the Skull Cannon of Khorne, and the Seekers of Slaanesh with the Herald of Slaanesh. Mistake to put those Blight Kings in the middle. Movement 4 meant that they never got into the game, so obviously in the future need to put them right up at the front and get them forward as quickly as possible. On my opponent's side, on the left, are the 15 Hammerers. That unit contains a Dwarven Lord. Then next to those in the middle are the Quarrelers. And on the right are the 20 Longbeards. Behind the Quarrelers you can see a Grudge Thrower. Either side of the Grudge Thrower is a cannon and an organ gun at the front. In front of the Hammerers by the forest is a gyrocopter, and next to the house closest to is a second gyrocopter. My opponent did place a hill in that corner, obviously looking to do the typical dwarf defend the hill thing, so I deployed a forest right in front of it, which prevented line of sight. Tactical maneuver. This is a competitive game after all. So before turn 1 I've made 2 vanguards. The Plague Drones have moved forwards in the centre there, and the Seekers of Slaanesh are heading towards the flank, obviously looking to go around and get into those war machines. So my opponent got turn 1. Here we are at the end of his movement phase. You can see the gyrocopter closest to us has moved towards the Seekers, and the gyrocopter on the far side has gone over onto the other side of the forest. My opponent has moved his Hammerers and his Longbeards, I think in anticipation of the Plague Drones. So at the end of my opponent's turn 1, you can see the gyrocopter closest to us has killed 4 Steeds of Slaanesh. 2 cannon shots at my wizard, 1 destroyed the wall, the other overshot, and the Grudge Thrower misfired, but obviously there's an engineer present, and managed to take out 2 Plague Bearers. So this is the end of my movement phase. Doesn't really show it particularly well, but I couldn't see that gyrocopter with my Seekers, so I charged it with the cannon first and it fled, and in doing so it fled into the path of my Seekers, which charged and caught it just off screen. In the middle, the Plague Drones were able to charge the organ gun. Obviously, they'd vanguarded, but didn't go first, so that was possible. My opponent was very gracious about that, as it was a very close call on the charge, and he let it through. And then everything else has advanced towards the Dwarven line. Obviously, want to get into combat as quickly as possible, away from those war machines. So at the end of my turn, you can see the drones only managed to take out 2 of the Dwarven crew, which was a shameful performance, really. Enchanted Blades on them was dispelled, although I did manage to get miasma on the Hammerers on the side there. Obviously, the Dwarf crew was stubborn, so the one guy held on a rerollable leadership 9. So my opponent's second movement phase, obviously the Hammerers and the Longbeards double charged the drones in the centre there, both on the flank, and the Quarrelers have reformed to anticipate the incoming Seekers with the Herald of Slaanesh, who has got a bit of a reputation. The gyrocopter's gone. If you look in the back tile there of the board, the gyrocopter is now harassing the plague bearers there. And my opponent seems to have placed down some random water feature in front of my Seekers. Bit of wishful thinking, let's just ignore that and pretend it's not there. So at the end of the turn, the Gyrocopter has taken out a couple of Furies after the Grudge Thrower failed to do so. His cannon has popped off a shot against my own cannon, but that was saved by my ward save. He has taken out a Blight King with a cannon shot, but I think the biggest story of this phase was the Plague Drones passing their leadership test in combat there, in the middle of the board. So into my turn, you can see there that the Plague Bearers on the far side and the Beasts both pulled off a flank charge. Actually, both units of Plague Bearers were successful in their roles, but one unit got in the way of the other. Elsewhere on the board, you can see the Herald of Tzeentch has moved in between the Plague Bearers and the Blight Kings for an attempt at Searing Doom on that Gyrocopter, and the Seekers are using the house as cover, and the Herald of Slaanesh has reformed, as obviously fast cavalry can, to stay out of the shooting range of that cannon. Actually, the photograph doesn't really do it justice, as the building was accidentally moved, but basically they were positioned so that the Seekers could charge out, but got hard cover from the building against the Quarrelers. So at the end of this turn, my opponent has used a Spellbreaker and managed to destroy Searing Doom. The two units of Dwarves are stubborn in the middle there and continue to fight on. I've managed to take out his cannon with my own cannon. I attempted miasma to reduce those Quarrelers' ballistic skill. So at the end of my opponent's next movement phase, not very much movement going on, Dwarves. He's just moved his Gyrocopter up there, sticking around with those Plague Bearers at the back. So at the end of my opponent's turn, you can see the Gyrocopter in the back has done nothing to the Furies, some dreadful rolling. 3 Seekers have been killed by the Quarrelers with shooting. Big moment, the Grudge Thrower, the Stone Thrower, killed my Wizard, and the Cannonball killed a Blight King. In the middle, combat went on, but lots of Dwarf stubborn leadership, so we're just grinding down in the middle. So into my movement phase, you can see the one remaining Seeker and the Herald of Slaanesh have charged the cannon there. The Furies have moved up just in case they're useful later on. The Blight King has continued to advance but will ultimately do nothing. And the cannon has turned around for a shot on the Gyrocopter. So this was the turn that would determine the game. The Herald of Slaanesh broke through the cannon, caught it and overran into the Grudge Thrower, but you can see in the middle the Dwarven Lord finally away from those Hammerers has broken. The Hammerers are all killed, caught by the Beast of Nurgle, and the Longbeards have fled as well. And the Herald of Nurgle's unit has overran into the flank of those Quarrelers you can see in the middle there. The cannon shockingly managed to hit the Gyrocopter and rolled a 1. During this turn, the Runesmiths and the Thane with the Dwarven BSB were also killed. So my opponent's movement phase, you can see the Gyrocopter has moved across there, not giving up easily, going to hope to take out 2 Furies. We forgot to attempt to rally those Longbeards, but they fled off the board when we did it at the end of the turn. So here we are, just before having remembered to rally or attempt to rally the Longbeards. The Seekers have taken out the Grudge Thrower. The Quarrelers held, remarkably. and reformed to fight to the death. Very dwarven. And a gyrocopter killed one fury in the background there. So into my next phase, you can see the furies have all come closer to the building, getting ready to charge off the quarrelers, and the Seeker and the Herald have reformed, preparing to head towards that gyrocopter. The beasts have come round, not that it will be necessary, and the cannon is lining up for a shot against that gyrocopter on the other side of the forest. So here we are at the end of the turn. You can see that the quarrelers finally broke against the one remaining drone and the BSB's unit of plague bearers and fled off the board. The cannon did take a shot at the gyrocopter to finish it all off, but misfired and rolled a 4. So my opponent and I agreed to end it there. There wasn't a great chance of one gyrocopter taking out the whole army. I think the game was really characterized by that early plague drone charge. A lot of people don't see that because, you know, plague drones are perceived as being quite slow with only being movement 10. But of course their average charge is 19 to 20 inches. Which of course is despite the fact that they can't march. Obviously that was a problem for the Dwarves because Dwarven strategy relies on pounding the opponent for at least a couple of turns with war machines before going into combat, which just wasn't the case here because we were in combat by turn 2. The Seekers and the Herald of Slaanesh bus, I'm a big fan of. I've said it many times on the forum. Once they get into those war machines, even just the Herald herself, it really is game over for an army that's reliant on war machines. And then it was just a grind, really. Beasts and plague bearers and drones against dwarves whose best armor was a 5+. Which, you know, obviously doesn't bode well when you're up against strength 4 and strength 5 troops. And that sort of really characterized the game, really. I do think the game showed the value of gyrocopters, and some advice for any young dwarf players out there. You know, first of all, buy a pair of those things. They're great. And then second, you know, you've got to play with a view to pounding your opponent for at least 2 turns with those war machines. Otherwise, they're just going to get into you. And if you don't have the troops with sufficient armor to deal with that, then, you know, you're going to suffer, as you saw today. And that was really the story of today's game. So anyway, that's the end. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.